2024 camera industry predictions. I did this last year. I noticed Petapixel make theirs. I haven't watched it yet. I didn't want it to influence my results. I'm also going to take a look at my previous predictions and see what I got right from 2023. Going to go in alphabetical order. So we'll start with Canon. I think they're going to fight to keep market share. I don't think they're really going to grow in market share. We'll see what they do on the camera side of things. It's likely that they're going to continue to fill out their entry-level lineup, and also with lenses especially, they need a lot more of the lower cost lenses to be that big, huge Goliath that they were for EF mount. They still have access to local stores in my area, so if I go to a Target, it's all Canon stuff, or maybe GoPro camera, something like that. There is the potential that they will release a global shutter camera. With all the rumors and stuff for years, it was Canon has global shutter technologies that they're working on. Obviously, maybe they're still behind Sony's, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're almost ready. Who knows? We'll see in 2024. With lenses, I think we're also going to see more third parties go into RF mount. If they do, it's most likely going to be Sigma and Tamron. DSLRs, we're probably just going to see a really slow decline of what they offer in DSLR lenses and cameras. We did see in 2023 that EFM is basically gone, and all of what it was is going to be pushed into RF mount. But we probably won't see the pricing and the sizing so much of EFM compared to RF stuff. There's just a physical difference, but we will see some relatively compact cameras. It would be nice if there is a M200, M100 style camera in RF mount. Obviously it's going to be bigger, but maybe it'll be more functional. DJI, what could they potentially do in 2024? I think we will see more cameras. Maybe they'll make actual cameras, considering drones are very niche in my opinion. But we have seen them introduce a new Osmo Action and a new Osmo Pocket, which is pretty impressive for what it is. Considering they're now in the L mount, we might see the video focus cameras that aren't specifically like big gimbal-y video focus cameras. Maybe there'll be a cheaper video camera that they'll release in L mount. That'd be pretty cool. Fujifilm, I really don't have any great predictions for them. Might see some refreshes in the various X cameras. I don't know a ton about them these days, and I just don't have a huge desire to use their cameras. Obviously, there's the X100 series. We might see a refresh of that, and I'd always like to see a refresh of the X70. Feels a little unlikely, even though it's a very popular format. They are still pushing in the medium format camera market. I think they need a new sensor from Sony to really make a huge difference. They had a little mess up from a marketing standpoint with their latest camera, considering it's using a different mode of an old sensor to get faster readouts depending on the situation, and they didn't portray that properly in my opinion when they marketed that camera. So we could potentially see more lenses and such, maybe even a relatively compact medium format camera. Leica, I don't have much to say about them. Obviously their equipment is for a certain type of user that has a lot of resources. The M mount, then maybe we'll see some specialty versions or whatever. I don't know too much about them in general. I haven't used any L mount equipment, but I am a fan of the idea of that L mount alliance, and it looks pretty good. Hopefully Leica really invests their efforts into making sure L mount is well kept. Nikon, I currently use a Z5 and a Z30. I've been complaining since I got the Z30 about 4K video, and it's basically got a 35-minute cap of heat buildup or whatever the heck is going on, even in HDMI out. Kind of disappointed with that camera at the moment, even though I think it's more firmware than actual heat in HDMI situations. Anyways, it's tough for me to think of what they could potentially do moving forward. I don't think they have a strong video focus, even though they have claimed a focus on video. Hopefully they do release a revised Z30 or maybe a full-frame version of that idea with a camera that will actually run for a long period of time in all of its video modes. They've got the high-end Z9 and Z8, so it's tough for them to do something higher than that unless they get access to the global shutter technology from Sony, which is likely, but I think it's still going to be at least more than a year is what I'm thinking. Probably what we'll see is refreshes of the Z7 and Z6 lineup. I don't know what they could do at this point with those. Maybe revise the actual body, make it a little larger. Imaging technology inside the processor and such will be better. They'll have better autofocus. Maybe they could potentially move the sensor from the Z8 and Z9 into the Z6. That would be very, very nice. It's not obviously global shutter, but it's fast. With the Z5, maybe they'll refresh it It's supposed to be the cheaper camera, so I don't know how much leeway they have. And maybe they'll actually cheapen it, which will be bad for Nikon if they put a bad viewfinder in the Z5 series, or they put whatever else to make it physically lesser than the current Z5. Hopefully they don't do that. This is more of a hope than an expectation, is that there will be more third parties and more options with lenses. Sigma does have the APS-C lenses now. Hopefully Nikon will let them release full frame lenses in Z mount if they actually want to. I'm not totally sure. There are a lot of Viltrox options, and Samyang, hopefully they get into autofocus Z mount. We'll see. But they're also probably pretty busy with L mount. OM Systems, this is going to be potentially a defining year for this company. If they do release quite a few cameras, quite a few things, this could be the point where we see, okay, this is OM Systems taking action rather than old Olympus. If it doesn't happen, if we don't see a lot in 2024 from OM Systems, we're going to have very low expectations for the company moving forward. Of course, they do have the OMD, which was most likely Olympus. I don't know if this OM pen camera actually exists and you can buy it new, so it's odd that they're advertising this camera on here. They did revise the TUF camera, TG7, but it's basically the same as the TG6 with rebranded case. At the very least, they're continuing that line of camera, which I think is the best out of that type of camera. In my last video, I predicted they would do a larger sensor version of that, but I really don't think it's going to happen. So I don't have huge expectations for them at this point. They will keep pushing on this mount. Hopefully they make cheaper, smaller cameras in Micro Four Thirds. Try to find some type of area where they can actually sell some quantity and make it more visible and relevant. They could potentially burn the company into the ground without releases at this point. I have high expectations for Panasonic Lumix into 2024. They released the S5 II, which is a phase detect full frame camera, and it's reasonably priced for what it is. They're probably going to go into the L mount lineup of cameras and put phase detect in all of their options. Maybe if they have the resources, that would be very, very nice. And they're actually doing it in Micro Four Thirds as well with the G9 II. In regard to the Micro Four Thirds stuff, there is the G100. I'm hoping that they revise that camera, put phase detect sensor in there, and also put sensor-based shake reduction so that it is actually a vlog camera that functions as one. They have a decent audio system in the original G100, but add those two pieces to the puzzle and then they could have a compelling option. Another camera I hope they revise in 2024 is the GX85. Again, put phase detect, add current technologies that they are capable of to that camera. That's a certain design, it has a nice look to it and relatively compact for what it is, Micro Four Thirds. That would be a very compelling option for some people. Moving forward, I hope that Panasonic does make smaller, lower cost Micro Four Thirds cameras so that they can differentiate their Micro Four Thirds cameras from their L mount cameras. Obviously, there's going to be a size difference, and I'm sure there are a large group of people that like Micro Four Thirds high-end stuff, but are there really that many? I'm not totally sure. For example, Canon EFM is gone. They could fill that niche with a Micro Four Thirds line of cameras and lenses. I'm impressed with the S5 II. With the video focus of Panasonic and L mount, I think they're going to really push to get more market share for L mount. Hopefully it works out because I like how they do things. Ricoh Pentax. This is more the same. It's basically going to be the same prediction as last year. They're going to make a new version of the GR with weather resistance. I'm going to keep saying it every year until they make one, but that would be the best thing to do. Hopefully they can increase the battery capacity potential without making it too large. But besides that, shake reduction, maybe improve how it works. I haven't used this camera, but I would like to get one at some point. With their DSLRs, maybe we'll see a lower end model. It's tough because they're turning into a very niche company with their DSLRs. They have the K3 Mark III, which is pretty pricey for what it is. Maybe they'll revise the full frame K1 with a larger optical viewfinder and all that, but I don't know if they have the resources to do it that quickly. I think it would be great if they release some type of weather resistant camera that isn't a repackage of something really old like the 2011 or so WG camera that I had. They basically repackaged that in 2023. Sigma 2024, I think we're going to see a lot more lenses, obviously. It's very possible that Sigma won't bother with ARF mount for 2024 because they have that L mount focus. With the Sigma FP, it would be amazing if Sigma gets access to the Sony global shutter sensor to put into the FP. I think that would make it a very valuable option for some people with that technology in the camera. Hopefully they release a camera that's more of a traditional style, a little larger, more ergonomics, basically like a mirrorless camera that's more of a logical format with a grip and stuff like that. We'll see. I don't think we're going to see Foveon anything. Sony Alpha 2024, I have a difficult time thinking of directions for them to go with cameras. Obviously, they did the global shutter thing. They have to actually release it now. It looks like it's going to come out around mid to late February. We'll see, and that's a very expensive camera, so we're probably not going to see any other global shutter cameras for Sony in 2024, except maybe towards the tail end around September, October, even November. Maybe there could be a lower cost global shutter camera from Sony come out. Hopefully they do, but it feels unlikely. If it does happen, I think it's going to be a FX type video focused camera with that technology from the Alpha 9. I think they're going to push into APS-C again to basically replace all of their older APS-C cameras with ones that use the sensor from the 6700. The 64, I don't think they should bother replacing. So at the very least, they'll make a lower end camera with that newer sensor. It's possible Sony could get back into their fixed lens cameras and release something new in their Tamron. They make lenses mostly, so that's basically what we're going to see more of in 2024. They could potentially make more Nikon lenses, maybe even get into RF mount, but that really depends on Canon. Even potentially see L mount, Samyang US, but it could also be Sammy Angus. Obviously going to see a lot of L mount glass come from them in autofocus, considering they joined the L mount alliance. That'll probably be their main focus, but we of course will see E-mount stuff. Hopefully Nikon Z-mount stuff, maybe RF, but again, that really depends on how particular Canon is about lens companies getting into their mount. With Viltrox, they've been making a lot of lenses for Nikon Z-mount, obviously E-mount as well. It looks like they're getting to cinema type stuff. Maybe they could potentially get back into RF mount, but considering the legal situations that were happening with Canon and Viltrox, it feels unlikely. Maybe they could get into L mount. That would be an interesting addition to the L mount alliance. There is some potential that Viltrox would eventually get into making actual cameras, and if they do, say, join the L mount alliance, make lenses for that, and also make a camera eventually for L mount, that would be pretty cool. Those are my predictions for 2024 in the camera industry. Canon, clearly something that's going to happen. It's very obvious to me, at least at this point. EFM, EOS M is likely going away. Canon EOS M did go away. Officially, it wasn't difficult to know that it was going to happen. At the very least, hopefully Sigma and Tamron are able to make RF mount lenses. There was some indication, I think, that they will allow third parties. I'm not totally sure on this, but it hasn't actually happened. Video stuff, because drones have so much legal hassles related to them. I could see them doing more action camera stuff this year. I'm not totally sure because I don't really pay too much attention to them, but they made a new Osmo Action. They also made a new Osmo Pocket. Probably see a refresh of the GoPro with who knows what at this. That did happen. 12. They took out the GPS, so they actually kind of downgraded the camera. It is nice that they have let some third parties, or they don't stop third parties from making lenses for the Z-mount. I could see that being a big benefit. Of course, they do have various third-party lenses now, but they have a weird collaboration with Tamron. So a lot of the Tamron lenses are actually Nikon branded lenses, and they're more expensive. Maybe they'll make a full-frame version of the ZFC. They did. Make a tough camera with a larger sensor. They didn't. They basically repackaged this one with all the same features for the most part in the same size sensor, and it put a new number on it. What could they do? Autofocus, phase detect autofocus. Panasonic, that's what you're gonna do in 2023. They did with the S5 II and S5 IIX, and it makes them much more appealing as an option for what I do and similar people that are doing a lot of solo videography stuff, and they want to rely on video autofocus. Of course, it does help photography autofocus as well. You're not going to have the jitteriness when you're focusing from contrast-based systems.